Thank you for joining me for this Lammas 1st of August rune reading, which I am recording ahead of schedule on the 22nd of July. I always especially love this time of year because, do excuse my scratchy voice at times, because although I had COVID over 3 weeks ago, it does sometimes still affect my larynx and I cough sometimes. But let's move to the runes that I chose for this reading now. So I'm just going to share the screen. Here we are. So ready to roll. So I felt inspired this time to choose 3 different runes. But before I move on to them, I would like to talk just a little bit about the Lammas celebration, that even in some Christian countries is celebrated in a way as where it is called the loaf mass, because it celebrates the time, Lammas celebrates the time of the early grain harvest that comes many weeks before the rest of the harvest, especially the fruit harvest, although of course some fruits are available earlier in the summer. But this is also the month of Lu, the Celtic sun god, which is very much about the power of the sun that has reached its peak, but it is still creating its wonders upon the earth, within nature, within agriculture. And the Celtic harvest mother and the corn mother are also, not surprisingly, associated in partnership in a way with Lu at this time, as the female and male aspects that are part of the celebration of Lammas. And then if we look into the ancient Greek traditions, Demeter and her daughter Persephone are also very much held to be in symbolism of Lammas, because Demeter celebrates the harvest, the early harvest, and her daughter Persephone, who went into the underworld, rather like the Norse goddess Hel. She symbolizes the seeds from the corn that of course drop deep into the earth with no life in them until the following spring. And this also reminds us, of course, that everything moves in cycles, not just the wheel of the year and the cycles of agriculture, but all aspects of life move in cycles. And it is within this framework, the framework of Lammas, of harvesting, and also the framework of the eternal cycles, that I am interpreting the runes chosen for this reading. I'm not this time going to go into a great deal of depth about each one, because I am felt inspired to read the 3 of them in unison, although the one in the center here does point more towards the future than the other 2, which speak of this present time. And Uras is very much about structure. It's about the unstoppable forces. And of course, the harvest is, or should be, an unstoppable force. I know that it's been a bit interfered with in some parts of the world, but it is, as far as nature goes, it is an unstoppable force that is arriving at its earliest point of fruition. And with this, we have also, with Uras, the sense of structure, the need to make something of that produce. And whether we are people that ever go out in nature, or whether we just stay in the city, we are all living lives that are touched by this, because we all bring that harvest to our dinner tables. And so no one is untouched by this. But I want to talk about harvest on all levels. What are we harvesting in life? What are we able to take away from this summer that is precious to us? But also, what are we going to make of that? How are we going to structure it? In the same way that the grain has to be processed, it has to be stored, something has to be made of it for it to be of full benefit. And this rune serves to remind us that that is also so with our lives, but particularly with that which has been in the development phase during the summer months, that we can maybe take an honest look at it and say, what can I harvest from this? And how do I want to harvest it? And this also fits both individually and collectively. And then at the center we have Tia. And when Tia is pointing towards the right like this, pointing towards the future, there is also a question hanging in the air as to what do we want to be developing for the future, particularly in relationship with the way that we handle authority, power, the way that we handle conflict, to look at how those issues could perhaps be handled differently in the future. And also, what are our aspirations in this regard? And how are we moving towards them? Because that is an important question for individuals, for groups, but most of all, I feel, for societies at this time, where so much is changing. Is it changing in ways that the way that power is held is something that is reflective of what we would want? Or is the opposite direction being moved towards? And I am not suggesting that it has to be one way or the other, only that these issues, the runes are pointing to these issues being uppermost in the few weeks after August, and just pointing to it being a wise thing to give consideration to these issues, not to take away the joy of summer or the bounty that nature has delivered. Because on the right we have a lovely rune called Eka, also known as Eras. And this rune, for me, I always think of it as two horses pulling a carriage. It's very much about working together, and it's fallen in its most positive orientation, because sometimes when it falls differently, because it still speaks of the aspect of working together, it can be talking about when working together doesn't have the capacity to go so well. But this rune is saying, just as is the case with the harvest, when many people work together to bring everything forwards in the right way, and then work together to process the bounty of that harvest, and ultimately to bring it to our dinner tables, we know that there is a working together that is beneficial, and that is highlighted as being particularly beneficial. People and groups working together for different reasons, towards different ends, that there is a particular benefit to this during the time between the 1st of August and the 21st of September. And I don't really want to get into politics here, although I will say that politically in the UK, these are obviously times of great change. And when I look at this rune, Eka, I see people working in quite original ways at the grassroots level, not really with big time politics. But of course, grassroots changes can have big manifestations given a little time. So this also fits with the meaning of Tia. In this reading, there are many different ways tear can be worked with. But in this reading, I am speaking about it as consideration of how the structures around us are developing to promote or limit that which we would like to see going forwards. And it's up to people to come together in the same way that they would to harvest grain, to harvest ideas, possibilities, and to actually promote different forces for change, a range of options that can come into the melting pot. And I see this as a productive time. I also see it as a creative time when much can be achieved and much can be clarified in a way where people become clearer about what they want and what they don't want, especially on a society level, but also, of course, for individuals, because everything starts with individuals. So I wish you a happy Lammas, if Lammas is something that you celebrate. I also wish all who are listening to this a wonderful late summer. And I encourage you to really make the most of it. Because whilst the peak of summer has gone, the beauties of late summer are very much with us. And I feel it's important to harvest those in our own hearts. Now, I do offer personal readings, both rune readings and also mediumship readings. And for those who are undecided what they would like, I offer a combination reading. A combination reading where we begin with a message or two from the spirit world. And then we move on to a rune reading. And then with a couple of the runes, I do something very special. I do my runes and rainbows technique, where I intuitively link with one of your chakras, which tells me a little bit more about how a rune will link with you, how it works with you. It doesn't change the meaning, but it makes it more personal. We then look out in relation to that rune, not only how the chakra defines the issue for you at this present time, but we look at the energies that are filtering in to your aura that tell us a little bit more about the development potential that that rune holds for you as the energies are developing at this time. And you can find out more about the readings that I offer on my website, Kate Cook Spirit Wings. I also offer runes and rainbows, readings and coaching sessions, where I will link with a chakra for each and every rune, and also seek the wider wisdom that is coming into your energy field at this time to give you support, upliftment, and encouragement, as well as the potential future you are building at this time. And sometimes there is a lot of scope to create change. And of course, other times we know that we are in a phase where life acts on us. But there is always scope for change within the response, within the attitude. And your reading will hold up options for you to consider. and inspiration to uplift you and widen your sense of possibilities. Thank you for joining me.